Welcome, dear viewers, to Poetry Blows Our Blues Away. Today's poet is one of America's greatest and most original poets of all times. She wrote 1800 poems in all. She was little known during her lifetime. Most of her poems were published posthumously. The poet is Emily Dickinson, and the poem we are going to read and enjoy today is her Because I Could Not Stop for Death. Here goes the poem. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality. We slowly drove, he knew no haste, and I had put away my labor and my leisure too, for his civility. We passed the school where children strove at recess in the ring. We passed the fields of gazing grain. We passed the setting sun. Or rather, he passed us. The dews drew quivering and chill, for only Gossammer my gown, my Tippet only Tulle. We passed before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground. The roof was scarcely visible, the cornice in the ground. Since then, it is centuries, and yet feels it shorter than the day I first surmised the horses' heads were toward eternity. The poem has 6 quatrains with the second and fourth lines rhyming. Let's analyze the poem stanza by stanza. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held just but ourselves and immortality. Emily Dickinson has a friend called Death. He asks her to stop for him. She expresses her inability to do so. He himself comes to her door. She readily takes her seat in the chariot and obliges him. Death, Dickinson, and immortality. There is room only for 3 persons in the carriage. The carriage held just but ourselves and immortality. Means death, Dickinson, and immortality. The chariot can accommodate only these 3 persons. Here, death and immortality are personified. Human qualities are attributed to them. Death is the charioteer. The poet is the passenger. As she takes her seat in the chariot, she is taken by pleasant surprise to see immortality already seated there. We come to the second stanza. We slowly drove, he knew no haste, and I had put away my labor and my leisure too, for his civility. Death drives slowly. It's a smooth journey. Death doesn't put her to any discomfort. The poet has put her labor as well as leisure, her vocation and her avocation too, away for his civility, means impressed by his pleasing manners. Look at the alliteration in labor and leisure. She is too charmed by his good manners, by Death's good manners, that she cannot but put away all her activities to join him. Symbolically, she is talking of accepting the inevitable. Even if you don't wish to die, death comes anyway. When he comes, we should be gracious enough to oblige him gracefully, without pulling our hair or beating our breast, without much ado, peacefully. So, the poet readily takes her seat in the chariot. The carriage holding only 3 persons. Death, Dickinson, and immortality, 2 is symbolic. This means when we meet death, Immortality gives us company. How optimistic. Immortality sort of escorts her and chaperones her, taking care of her, dispelling all her fears. The poet's refusal to wait for death too is significant. We should not invite death in advance by shirking our duties, by sitting idle, by leading a vegetable life. A useless life is an early death, isn't it? So she declines waiting for him. I am immersed in my duties. I am immersed in doing my labor and leisure. I cannot wait for you, she tells him. But when he comes, in a gentlemanlike manner, to pick her up, she obliges him. This exemplifies how one must meet one's death calmly. It also shows us how to live our life. We should die in harness. As we discharge our duties, we should court death. Now we come to the third and fourth stanzas. We pass the school where children strove at recess in the ring. We pass the fields of gazing grain. We pass the setting sun. Or rather, he passed us. The dews drew quivering and chill, for only Gossammer my gown, my Tippet only Tulle. As they ride, they pass by some scenes. The first scene is the school children striving in the ring, in the recess, during the break time, in the circle. It symbolizes the poet's childhood. The second scene they pass by is the fields of gazing grain. This scene of ripe corn represents adulthood. The second scene, this is adulthood. The setting sun they pass by represents old days. At last, they arrive at their destination, the burial ground. Now we come to the fifth and sixth stanzas. We passed, P-A-U-S-E-D, we passed before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground. The roof was scarcely visible, the cornice in the ground. Sixth stanza, last one. Since then it is centuries and yet feels it shorter than the day. I first surmised the horses' heads were toward eternity. She feels a chill, a shiver runs through her body. She attributes it to her Gossammer gown and Tippet Tulle, her thin clothing. She is not adequately dressed for the outing. The chill may be due to the fear of meeting death. She attributes it to her Gossammer gown very cleverly. We guess the chill may be due to the fear of meeting death. Also observe the alliteration in Gossammer gown, Tippet Tulle, setting sun. Passing scenes of childhood, adulthood and old days suggest that death has been our constant companion throughout our lives. Daily we are nearing death, approaching our graveyard. The chariot symbolizes life's journey. Here I am reminded of the lines, scepter and crown must tumble down and in the dust be equal made with the humble scythe and spade. Death is not alien to us. It's part and parcel of our lives. Death and life aren't contradictory terms. They are contradictory things. They are complementary things. As they reach the house of death, which is just a mound, a mere swelling of the ground, not a palace. The mound is the ceiling. The house is underground, made of earth. Since then, since her burial, she has lost count of time. We come to the sixth stanza. I will repeat the sixth stanza. Since then it is centuries and yet feels it shorter than the day. I first surmised the horses' heads were they were toward eternity. So here In the house of death, centuries appear shorter than the day. When we die, we are freed from the prison of time and space. Death opens doors to immortality and eternity, deathlessness and timelessness. Death doesn't bring us to nothingness, but brings us to our native place, the abode of God. The horses' heads were toward eternity, the last line. Emily Dickinson remembers. Thus the poem concludes on an optimistic note, dispelling our fears. What an amazing description of death. I consider the poem a superb lesson in life skills and personality development. Nothing morbid about the poem. In fiction and films, we come across stereotyped descriptions, representations of death, dressed in black, with a skull face, a skeleton body, wearing a bone garland, carrying weapons of destruction, breathing fire, with a grin on his face, terrorizing people. How refreshingly new is the depiction of Emily Dickinson. We are awestruck by her daring portrayal of death. Nothing gory or scary about him. It sounds like a joyride, isn't it? No melancholy, no sentimentality. Emily Dickinson frees the poem from conventional shackles. She instills in us courage to face life and meet death. She teaches us the art of meeting death, art of living as well as the art of facing death. The poem empowers us, strengthens us, and energizes us. Both life and death puzzle and perplex us, yet Dickinson tries to decipher them in her own unique style. The poem is a beautiful exploration of life and afterlife. Using short lines, her own unique capitalization and punctuation, employing personification, alliteration, metaphors, and apt and awesome imagery, she gives us fantabulous insights. No wonder she is described as one of the rarest flowers New England ever bore. Rarest flowers New England ever bore. She is also heralded as the greatest woman poet in the English language. Alan Tate rightly calls this particular poem, this piece, a flawless poem to the last detail. Let's read and enjoy more and more of her poems. That's all for now. See you soon with yet another amazing poem. Till then, happy poetry reading.